Hey everybody, it's Dan Lapel from New Focus Recordings, and I am joined by the wonderful Departure Duo, Nina Guo, soprano, and Eddie Kass, bass. And I think this is a first. I think this is the first time that everybody on the Zoom has been uh, uploaded into the consciousness of their album cover.
Well,
Yes, we've gotten real deep
Yeah,
on
so
this one.
thank you for the solidarity, and it looks great. And
Yeah.
apparently, so for those of you out in YouTube land, we are talking about Departure Duo's new album that came out last Friday, October 7th, 2022,
Mhm.
Immensity of, and amongst many other very compelling things to talk about, you guys have an anecdote that you want to share about this lovely image that's behind all of us, or that we're inside,
yeah,
Yes.
whatever you want to.
yeah, that we're inside of. Um, uh, so this cover art, which is an untitled pen and ink drawing by Anne-Sophie Coiffet, a French artist, from her Parallel series or series Parallel. The way we came to her art was that during the pandemic, in like from about June 2020 until January, my sister, who normally lives outside the US, was subletting an apartment in DC with a friend. And I went down for the last 2 weeks of December to just spend some time with my sister, drove down because we weren't going to be able to go back to California with my family. And it just so happened that the French couple who they were subletting the apartment from had this little book called something like The History of Pebble City. And it was this like landscape orientation paperback book. And I just like pulled it off the shelf. My sister had never even like seen it in the apartment. I pulled it off the shelf and read it. I was like, this is great. It's like these really cool drawings and this great story. I think Nina would like this. And so I took pictures of it and sent it to her. And she was like, this is awesome. We should like write down this artist's name and maybe collaborate with her someday. And fast forward to a couple years later when we were like needed album art for this, and we are like, oh, this would be the perfect time to reach out to Anne-Sophie. And so we just messaged her on Instagram and told her we liked there was another one of these drawings in this series, and then she made this one for us. And
Awesome.
Yes. And
So
we're
all
super
these
happy, super grateful. It was like the ultimate cold call. It was like, hello, you don't know us,
yeah,
and we promise that we like your work. And also, we're in contemporary music, and we would really love it if your art could be our album artwork.
yeah,
And
yeah.
yeah.
One of the silver linings of the pandemic, I guess.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
cool. So, well, let's have you guys talk a little bit about the duo in general, the album, this very fruitful but somewhat rare instrumentation. I think would that be fair to say? Uh,
Yeah.
give me the backstory.
So I think that like a lot of groups we met each other at school. We both went to New England Conservatory in Boston. And originally we'd played together in the context of a larger group doing the Crumb madrigals, George Crumb's madrigals. And then at some point, Eddie was like, hey, I there's this piece by one of my favorite composers, Kortag, and I really want to play it on like one of my recitals. Would you like to work on it with me? And that was sort of the beginning of the end.
Is this the
Yeah.
end? Are we at the?
Yeah, we're
This
at
is
the
where
end.
we
We've
all end up.
uploaded. We're here.
Wow.
Yeah, this
If
is where
anybody
it
wants to
ends.
find us ever, we're in this Zoom.
Soprano
Yeah.
double bass is the singularity.
You
Right.
just
Yeah.
get a copy of the album and you just jump
Right.
inside.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Cool.
exactly.
It's
So
kind of
that's
like the
Yeah.
Aha music video for Take on Me.
yeah.
Yes.
Right. Actually,
Yeah. Yeah.
that is exactly what this is like. Uh, that's
Yeah.
cool. So I mean, uh, if I may, like I sort of was as I've been listening to the album and thinking about the instrumentation and also thinking about a lot of other releases we have that are for female voice, usually high voice, and one other instrument. I feel like the registral separation between soprano and bass gives all of these pieces like a bigness that you just
Yeah.
don't get. I mean, it's really remarkable. It's just it doesn't sound like two players anymore. It's
Would you
you know
would you say it gives them an immensity?
I would say that actually, especially if I was prompted. If
Um,
I was prompted, that would be exactly what I would say.
but it's
Yeah.
it's really true. And I think that's, I mean, we wanted to play together first because we liked playing together
Right,
and we liked
right,
making
right.
music together. But then when we first started, it was like, oh, here's a couple pieces that would be fun to work on. And then as we started to learn, as we started to research more repertoire and then go into commissioning, we started to learn more about like really sort of like unlock the power of this combination and start to better understand what is really possible with it and how expansive the range of colors and how what like these sort of endless possibilities of endless sonic possibilities, because each time we've played a new piece, and like the 4 pieces that are on our album each treat the combination so differently. Each time we've played a new piece, it's like someone is treating it in a different way, and then it becomes this like entirely different instrument. And that's sort of how we ended up with sort of our larger goal as a duo, which we call 30 by 30, which is this goal to have there be at least 30 hours of soprano double bass music by 2030. And that's there's a two-prong approach. One, and I think both of these things are represented in this album. So one is, of course, commissioning. 3 of these pieces were written for us. And that's Katie Balch's piece, John Aylward's piece, and Emily Pretorius's piece. So a big part of our work is commissioning. And then the other part is researching pre-existing music. And so in this case,
that would be like the Kurtog, yeah,
which is what started our journey playing together. And so we've done a bunch of research trying to catalog every piece that's ever been written for soprano and double bass. We have a database on our website that anyone can go read about all these pieces, because we don't want it to be as hard for the next generation of soprano and double bass players to find music. And each time even if they're pieces we choose not to play, each time we find a new piece, we're learning more about how somebody saw or heard this combination. And it gives us more information for the next time we commission someone, or more information about how we play each piece, and just better understand what, like you said, there's a lot of times this registral separation. And so it's like, what does that mean? How do we treat that? Sometimes we're actually in the same register, and like, what does that mean? And how are we creating this color combination? And then there are some spots, I think on the album, there's 1 or 2 where I am actually above where Nina is singing. And that's just like your whole world's being turned
crazy.
Crazy. That's cool.
My whole world gets turned upside down when
Yeah.
that happens.
Yeah.
Very alarming.
Yeah, no, that's really great. I mean, so many really interesting projects, I think, grow out of instrumentations of iconic pieces.
Yeah.
But this one seems to be like sort of doubling down on that in a way, since it's a combination I think most people don't necessarily think of, but it's such a great combination. And like you said, it's not just that it's always separated. The fact that you can also play in a sort of similar register, or that opens up all the strategies that composers might have used if they were writing for soprano and violin, or soprano and viola,
Yeah.
Or any other treble instrument. So it's like you
What-
sort of have a multiplied like possibilities, which is great.
Yeah.
What's also really cool for us, and like what's exciting for me as a bass player, is the bass has it's like a playground for composers in a lot of ways, because there's so many possibilities with all the different techniques that it can do and all the different sounds it can produce. There's such a huge range of colors, but the problem is that it's not very loud. And so when you try to access all of those colors in a larger ensemble, they don't often cut through. You don't get to hear them. And so when it's usually in ensembles, it does what it does so well, which is provide that foundation where it's very present, but you're not hearing these little tiny details of nuance and these little small sounds and these different effects with overtones or harmonics or little extra different kinds of sound. But because there's just two of us, there's so much transparency in the instrumentation. And so composers can actually take advantage of all the sounds that I get to make. And you get to highlight the best of bass and like the whole world that can be in.
Yeah.
And hear that in the context of not like, you hear that in bass solo pieces, but then it's just solo pieces.
Yeah.
And so we get the fun of playing together, creating something that has the great qualities of chamber music.
Yeah. And it seems
plus
to be such an effective tool for word painting too, which I think is such a big component of a lot of these pieces.
I mean, I think that's the sort of in the same way that Eddie gets to be really, is really excited about, finally having all of the colors of his instrument heard. I mean, I think that for me, what I still get excited about by the pieces on the album is the text, that it's really like for every piece, I think that it was text that I was introduced to like through this music. And I think it's great. It's so like in Katie's piece, the first one, like she really I didn't know the Rimbaud poetry before. And like, I just love the way that she kind of dissects all the words and kind of like puts them in a different order. She's like really playing with that onomatopoetic like quality in a lot of the gestures. And then with John Aylward's pieces, this one also has kind of a like slightly funny backstory, which is that I was working with John before, and I think and maybe Eddie as well. But anyway, so John knew that like Eddie and I had this duo, and one day we were hanging out, and he just goes, "Oh, Nina, I have something for you." I was like, "Oh, great!" And he just like hands me this like score. Like, I think he handed me like a manuscript, you know what I mean? Like, I don't think he'd even like made a copy yet. And he's like, "Look, it's for you and Eddie to play. And it's Rilke, and it's an animal poem." And that was the Panther. That was like the first of these like set of things, because John and I are both, like we're big animal fans, and we're both Rilke fans. And so he just like,
that's great.
Ripped
nice
like made these pieces. Yeah, it was so like it was just like what a treat, to have these pieces by John and to really feel like yes, and they address so many of my like top concerns.
That's awesome. Well, cool. I think Katie's piece is a good place to start, to just listen to a little bit and give a sense of it. Maybe the third movement, J'ai tendu des cordes. Again, this is Rimbaud poetry, and this is Catherine Balch's phrases. And let's take a listen. Departure Duo. Wonderful. A very sort of infectious rhythmic energy to that one. Do you want to say a bit more about this particular movement or the piece in general?
Well, I think
it's the second of two pieces. This is Katie is a big contributor to our little universe.
Awesome. She's a wonderful composer. Everything I hear, I'm blown away.
Yeah. The first piece that we ever asked anyone to write for us was Katie.
Oh, cool.
Which she wrote for us in 2015. But yeah, it's so like this movement I think really effectively gets across that idea that Nina was talking about, which is the way that even like pulling apart these words can sound like what the words are describing, which is this hanging these ropes from bell to bell, and it's this like delicate motion of just like hanging these little ropes.
Great.
It's also, I think, it may be worth noting that Britten set this same text in his L'Illumination for either soprano or tenor and string orchestra.
Yeah.
And what I think is particularly funny about that movement that we just listened to is Katie only sets like the first couple words of this longer couplet or poem or whatever, to take up this many bars, this much music. Britten sets the entire sentence, and it is like so slow, and I think he goes for like suspended time with setting all these words, whereas Katie just takes a few of them, and you get, it's just really interesting to see the way different people interact with this text.
Totally. Yeah, that's cool. It becomes more of like a modular use
Yeah.
of words. Yeah. Do you want to add anything, Nina, or
no?
Okay.
I just like that movement a lot.
I
I guess I like all the movements.
I like every movement of that. That fourth movement also is just totally
really beautiful,
transporting.
Yeah, pretty amazing.
Cool. Well, let's pivot back to the piece that formed everything for you, Georgi Kortag's. I'm not even going to try to say this title actually, if one of you don't mind.
Einige Sätze aus den Sudelbüchern Georg Christoph Lichtenbergs.
Beautiful.
That doesn't just roll off the tongue for you.
No, not yet, but maybe I need to spend more time in Germany. But
which means some phrases, some sentences from the like day journals of Georg Christoph Lichtenbergs,
who was this aphorist, amongst other things, I'm sure.
He was like
aphorists are. Does anybody just write aphorisms? Like, can you like make your life an aphorist?
No, I think
isn't that like a tweeter? Isn't that like a Twitter celebrity?
Right. It would be a little bit like that. It's like the older version of like being a sort of Twitter celebrity.
Yeah.
But
in
order to be a good aphorist, you have to have some other experience because you're not theorizing about anything, I think. So
yes.
And he was a 18th century philosopher scientist.
Cool.
His most noted contribution in the science world is like figuring out something about the shape of lightning.
Yeah, like the shape that lightning takes. They're called Lichtenberg figures because he, I think, like notated or like described them for the first time or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so but these texts are super funny. They're super like
weird.
They are very weird, and like I think like a lot of I'm thinking of the Kafka fragments at this point, where
Kafka fragments,
yeah. So in the same way that for each of the fragments, in a way that every fragment is like a self-contained universe.
Yeah.
It's exactly the same vibe, let's say, with this piece.
Yeah. We're putting out a recording of the violin signs, games, and messages later this month too, actually, which is sort of a cool coincidence. And I just heard of Kafka fragments over the summer, and I mean, he's such an amazing composer. Everybody knows, but maybe people are now like really starting to appreciate. Well, this guy's still around, and sort of like it's like almost it's the same economy of material as Webern, but it's not systematic in the same way, but it's like he almost created his own kind of like rigorous matrix for expression or something.
Yeah. I mean, it's
say it, Eddie. Say it. Describe what you refer to Kurtag's music as.
Oh, now I'm like not even remembering what Nina thinks, but
Schrodinger's music.
Oh, well, this is interesting. Yeah. Well, it's really interesting because reading an interview with him, he was talking about some of his pieces because he often redacts and revises pieces. And he described some pieces that he had redacted as music to be read. And not even in the sense of like, oh, I'm going to sight read. Like, it's music to be read, because I think in some ways it's these like hypothetical musical situations where knowing that the moment somebody plays it, it's going to be wrong. Because you can't achieve what is written. So that's why Nina and I like to refer to this Schrodinger's music. Because as soon as you play it, you've ruined it. And
Yeah,
To
although
some extent,
I mean, we don't feel that way about
no,
this
not
piece.
not
Yeah,
the pieces, but
I don't
it
think
is a
you guys.
notation language, and also a
I don't think you ruined. It's
like
it
it's
sounds
something
beautiful.
where
thank you.
Yeah.
But what I think, or the truth that I think still exists within this piece, which I think is true with his Kafka fragments, which I think is true with his Science Games and Messages, which is basically, I think, one of the essentialisms about Kurtag's music. Okay, it does have this like economy of notes and space that like Webern has. It also has like Bach is one of his biggest influences. So there's like this really meticulous idea of structure. But especially when you're looking at his pieces with text, there's often present within however many like 4 bars of music, there's almost always like 2 opposing forces, and they can't exist together. It's not possible to have both these ideas coexist, but they're
yeah,
both present in the music, and your job as a musician is to try and make a way for both of these to coexist. And so it's like one of these pieces that I think you continue playing for a long time. Like we've been playing this since we started playing together in 2014, but you know, even now I would say some of the way we approach these movements is different than when we recorded them. And it's just because you're always trying, like you can go, let's say you have these 2 ideas, you go try and make sure this one is present and clear, and you're like, wow, we got a really good version that shows this. But then you're like, wait, but what about this thing that is the complete opposite, that is equally present in the score? Let's try and go this way. And it's like you're always trying to push together these things that can't coexist. And like that's the puzzle, and that's the fun. And trying to get that to work is really interesting.
It's
yeah,
definitely a lot like playing Bach. I think you have
Yeah.
one parameter, and then you realize that the other parameter is taking a back seat, and but it supports so many different approaches. You know?
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
That's really
Which that all sounds like really thorny intellectual music, but this music is also just funny and fun.
it's very
And
funny.
there's life
Yeah,
in this character, and the text
yeah,
is weird and is interesting and is
yeah.
quirky, and like there is that element present in his music as well. Like there's humor. He's always in on the joke.
Yes, there's always. I would say, especially in this piece, for many of the movements, there is a joke.
Yeah.
And like in a way, at least for me, like you know how I think about some of the movements now, like structurally I feel that in some, like there is a punchline, you know, like then like you can sort of see where the joke happens, you know, like where the bit gets dropped in a way, but it's happening kind of in the music. And so like there's so I think we're gonna play Die Kartoffeln, that movement, the potatoes.
Yes.
And the text for this translates to, there they lie, the potatoes, sleeping towards their resurrection.
I love it. Okay.
Or like awaiting their resurrection, something like this.
Fantastic. All right, here it is. Cool. Well, do you guys want to mention any of these other gems of text setting?
Yes. So we have one movement that called Und eine neue Welt, and a new world. And we love the text for it. And we also love the way that Kurtag kind of has written it to be what we think is like a very unexpected gesture. So the text is, the American who discovered Columbus made a bad or evil discovery. And in the music, Kurtag includes 2 pauses. And it even says in the score that both performers are supposed to, like, it's not just like a silence or like a GP. You stop with your like mouth and eyes open. Like
there's an incredible level of specificity in for something that at the same time, like, it's this again, this with this weird, these contradictions. His music is both hyper specific and very open-ended.
So the open-ended part in this is that we have 2 of these pauses in about, I don't know, 5 measures of music, something like that. Just it's a 1 page of music, and one is just supposed to be longer than the other. Like one is long and one is short, so it doesn't say how long that pause is supposed to be. Well, we've sort of feel that, as interpreters, we feel like, well, I mean, we never get to do this, and if one's long and one is short, we better make the long one like pretty long, right? Because well, like, how long can we like hold it? It's got to feel really weird.
And that first pause, there's a little like just me playing first, but then that first pause comes after just the words "the American."
Yeah.
It's not like you even have much context at all. You just, and it runs into that pause.
Yes. Yes.
And then it just stops where you're supposed to freeze.
And so for a long time, we had, I think we still have it up, but like the homepage for our website was a video of us playing this movement. And at multiple concerts, people have come up to us and they've told us that, they went to our homepage to see what our music was going to be like. And they watched this video, and that they thought their internet had gone out because we froze so good in the video.
Nice.
It's a lot of fun.
It's really fun. And I remember, sometimes in rehearsal, Eddie will like look at me, he's like, Nina, you like can't blink in our pod.
I'm good at not blinking in this
I know. And I have to practice a little bit, the not blinking.
Real challenge.
Tape.
Huh?
Tape your eyes.
Yeah, I'm just gonna tape them open, and then I'll rip it off for the rest of the movement.
There are a few Wandelweiser recordings I've heard. Like, I remember recording, Eric Carlson, the violinist. Eric made a recording many years ago that had like an enormous amount of silence. It was like an 80-minute recording, and maybe 30 minutes of it was silent.
Wow. Oh, wow.
And it was like, so it was this weird sense that it was like that much silence on a recording is like extremely, there's something arresting about it.
Yeah.
It's like, it's hard to describe the experience.
Yeah.
Part of it made me a little bit angry, but another part of me was like, wait, it's not just playing in the background.
Yeah.
Silence. How is that possible?
When we do this in concerts, like, we want to push the limits of the audience's comfort. We want them to feel like it's long enough that they're just like, what's happening?
What's happening?
What's happening?
This is sort of off topic, but it's just funny. Do you guys know Corey Smythe, the pianist? He's a colleague of mine in ICE, but also played a lot with Taishan Sori in a trio for many years. And this is maybe going back like a pretty long time, and I guess they had a gig at the Stone. And apparently there was like some moment where there was an arrival or a cadence or something, and then Taishan was supposed to cue the next thing, and it was just like a normal fermata, and he was going to cue the next thing. They get to this moment, and it's like they've been playing for like 10 or 15 minutes in this set, and Taishan goes like this, but he doesn't finish the cue. He stops mid cue, and then he holds it, and then like 2 minutes go by, and like 10 minutes go by, and he's still, and 35 minutes went by. And Corey is like sitting there like, not sure, should I play? Should I not? People are getting up and leaving. And he's still like this. And then at some point he just puts the sticks down and walks off. That was it. He was like, that was the gig. So
wow.
That is awesome. That's an awesome story.
there, I guess he just had this sense he was about to do. He's like, no, actually, that's not where this should go.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Wow.
Wow.
I wasn't there, but I hear about it, and now I feel like I tell the story.
Wow.
It's funny, but
Yeah.
A truly subverted expectation. Oh
yes,
man,
I mean,
that is
he's sort of
that's a very cool story.
so
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. And what I like so much about the way the pauses are approached in the Kurtog is the rest of that movement. Like we're so used to, I mean, you mentioned Vondelweiser music. We're so used to like pauses and silences in music that's very spacious and slow.
yeah.
um that's not always where we get them, but like that kind of stuff. But this, like, the rest of the music in that movement is like, the word he uses as the tempo marking is kek, which is like jaunty, and it's like you get this 6/8 kind of compound meter, and then it just like runs into these walls.
It's all yeah. It's like the thing is suspended in time for a moment. That's really
Yeah.
well. So maybe
Yeah.
next time you play it, if you want, I don't know who gives the cue to come out of it, but you have a lot of power there. You can choose
Yeah.
to just not finish the piece.
It's Nina because she has to breathe.
It's
Right.
me, and I also have to blink. Like that's we gotta go back. I have to blink.
Well, listen, I have no reason to think that Tyshawn either didn't blink or didn't breathe. But
Yeah.
what all he did is he didn't cue the next thing.
Didn't cue.
He
So,
just didn't cue. He just didn't cue.
cool. So
Yeah,
do
I
you
think
want to?
that
Oh, go ahead.
Mhm.
Um,
I was gonna say that I mean I think it's also for us as interpreters of this piece. I think that we also just like we try to have a lot of fun, you know, with the gestures in it that in a way seem over the top, you know, but that are they are written in the score. And so we kind of, you know, feel like, well, if it's, you know, it's written there, it's clearly not, you know, he doesn't mean maybe.
Yeah.
And so, and there's another in another movement about the gourmand, there's a sound that where I have a marking to the text. Okay, so the text is he could say the word succulent, which you're supposed to say in a French accent. He could say the word succulent in
yeah.
such a way that when one heard it, one believed one was biting into a ripe peach.
Ah,
And on this part, they like one believed that one is biting into a ripe peach. You are supposed to gather a lot of saliva in your mouth. That is the musical marking for me.
wow. Wow.
Gather a lot of saliva in your mouth and
Yeah.
Like sucking on a lemon.
like sucking on
Yeah.
a lemon.
Right,
Like
right,
And that's the thing, is like when we perform this, it's dramatic, it's theatrical, and we've tried to capture as much of that as possible in the recording,
right.
but it's never, we're never putting anything on the music and on the performance that isn't already there in the score.
yeah.
Like,
We're just trying to make it more audible and
freeze with your eyes and mouth open for a long time.
Yeah.
Save lots of saliva. Like
Yeah.
those markings, those things need to be audible and discernible from the audience. And so it's
Sure.
our job to find a way to make
To communicate that.
those markings come to life.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's also, I mean, here, just as we're talking about it, we've given the text for each movement before we talk about it, because the immediacy of that is so important, which is why we decided in the album, which is the same way we perform it, we speak the translation of each movement before we play it, because that's the way you get this immediacy. And that, I do have to give credit where credit's due, which that practice is something that we came to because of the mezzo-soprano Stephanie Blythe, who is one of my musical heroes. And that's the thing she has talked a lot about in her recital practice, is whenever she's singing or having students sing in a language other than English for an audience that primarily speaks English, she has them read a translation of the text before singing it, because that way she doesn't hand out text sheets at the concert, because she wants the audience to be looking at you, because that's where you're communicating. And that way you give them the text first, you give them your perspective on the text, and then you share your perspective plus the composer's perspective. And there's an immediacy there that I think is really important for a piece like the Kurtog, where the jokes and the humor are so dependent on understanding what's being said.
Yeah, or at least having a yeah, it's also that there's sort of no, I mean, even for us as we're going through, sorry, I have a guest.
No, that's okay.
Go
Your
on, go
guest
on,
seems to
Lily. No,
also
Lily.
landed in the singularity with you. So.
Yeah, you know, like Kat's will, she just passes through into her
Yeah,
other
yeah, yeah.
dimensions.
Well, and yeah.
Yes.
Sorry.
um, but I was saying that especially for the Kurtag, so much of the text is so, I mean, it's just fragments. It's not even entire sentences. It's just a noun with an adjective attached to it, you know, or
Right.
it's half of an idea. And so I think, yeah, sort of taking up Stephanie Blythe's practice, it's also in the way that like we say it, you know, that we try to give people an in, you know, like, oh, we feel this way about it,
Yeah.
or we have this image.
Yeah. Cool. Well, it's such a remarkable piece, as are all of his pieces, and it's also such a great introduction to the duo. So so much richness in there. Should we pivot to John's
Yeah.
piece now?
Yeah.
You sort of mentioned that this was something that landed in your lap uh, suddenly, which sounds like a great gift.
The best gift ever.
Yeah,
It was
fantastic.
just so, yeah, so unexpected. And so even after John like gave me the first one, he was like, and there's more. It's like, oh
Right.
my God.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, yeah. And it's three Rilke settings,
Yeah.
each about a different animal,
Hmm.
and there's like a mythical. I feel like a lot of his work uh, sort of delves into myth and like the two records that we have on New Focus, and also Oblivion that we worked on together, Nina. Like, uh, it feels like he's attracted to not just the content of the myth, but also the way that the myth has a way of sort of like taking on a life of its own and developing over time. And I don't know if that's as true maybe with Rilke as it would be for like Greek and Roman stuff, but uh, he's a literary fellow. That's what I'm
Yeah.
saying. John Elward is
Yeah.
a literary fellow.
There's a marking. I don't remember actually if we have it in our in the pieces on the album, but there's a marking that I know John is very fond of, at least for vocal parts, which is like with wonder.
Hmm.
And I think that
Yeah,
there's
we have that
okay.
in the unicorn.
Yeah, okay, I would have guessed. And I think that for me, that yeah, that marking somehow says it all, you know, that like John is someone who, oh, another one is probing and
Right.
with wonder.
Right.
And I think that there's something about John where he really, yeah, he's probing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and what's really interesting for us, and one of the things we tried to achieve with this album, was to show different facets of what soprano and double bass can do and different approaches to it, and especially putting this on the album right after Katie Balch's piece, where you get so much of this like text fragmenting and text like, you know, pulling that apart, is in a lot of ways John is setting text very much in the tradition of German Lieder.
Yeah.
Like it's, the text needs to be audible, the text needs to be presented fully and in a way that someone can understand it, and like that is what's driving the images behind it. There's a lot of text painting, like the way that I represent images is so similar to the way you would hear like Schumann, Wolf, Schubert songs representing the images of, you know, Goethe's poetry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's really from that same like German art song tradition, and it's interesting for us to hear that in our combination.
Sure. Yeah, and it represents sort of contrast to text setting on the album as a whole. So
Yeah.
should we listen to a bit of Der Schwan, the Swan? Give some
Yeah,
context.
this one.
Great. Here we go. Cool. Do you want to contextualize that for us a little bit?
Yeah. So this poem, The Swan, is about, well, it talks the swan with its like awkward gait on land is like our sort of ever suffering struggle of day-to-day life. And then upon settling into the water is like this release in death. You might not say that. That like not more living, and the swan suddenly is graceful on the water, you know, its feet going underneath. But that's where the swan becomes graceful, like freeing itself from the our daily life struggle of existing to settle onto the water of this release in death,
Yeah.
which is, you know, a very common kind of image in a lot of this German poetry, that like the release of death.
Yeah.
But that excerpt that we just heard is the swan settling into the water, and you hear Nina as the like effortless gliding of the swan on the water with these like beautiful long lines of just this like poise and beauty. Meanwhile, I'm the churning, moving water of the swan's feet and of the current of this river, or just like the waves of this water, where I'm just playing all these arpeggios and glissandi, just like tons of notes, getting this like flowing water, which is so similar to what you hear in like, you just like any number of lieder about water, like what is it, Auf dem Wasser zu singen, the Schubert song where you get lots of watery notes in the piano.
Yeah.
And it's again this like image that we have learned to interpret as water. Like we hear that and we're like, ah, watery.
Yeah.
And
Or
that's very present here.
all the babbling brook. Like
Yeah.
Liebesbotschaft or whatever. Yeah. Like,
Yeah, exactly.
it's definitely a thing.
Yeah. 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 But what I really like about I mean, in that passage, I think like it's somehow really like, it always really hits me when you have this like, like this part at the end, because in a way that's, I don't know. I think it's one of those things that I hear and I'm like, oh man, like that's like, it's such a good gesture. It feels so musical. It feels so with the image. And also it's very like, it's a string gesture, you know, like a piano
Yeah, just
cannot
going up
make
across
that.
the strings.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like it's just, it doesn't have, and I think that it's one of those, you know, I'm not like, you know, comparing, contrasting, you know, instruments or something like that. But I think when we talk about, you know, like our 30 by 30 project, I mean, for us, one of the things that we want is that we want to hear other people playing this music. And I, you know, kind of think about these moments where it's like, you know, John's three pieces they're so beautiful. And it would be great to hear, you know, I think it would be really special for, you know, other singers to kind of have these moments, you know, where they can also like work with with a bassist, because you really hear something that is so connected to the image of the text, but you would never get this sound from a piano.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. And that's the whole thing of what in the music that we play and what we put on this album and what we catalog is music that is specifically written for soprano and double bass. Like there's a lot of great open instrumentation music out there that we could play, but we're really interested in like what this combination uniquely brings and like how to take advantage of what this has to offer. And it's just so exciting to see like endless new approaches to it from the different composers that we commission, the different pieces we dig up. And there's always like new surprises from the way someone decides to write for us. And it's really exciting.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, let's make sure to touch on the final piece of the album,
the titular piece,
which also happens to be the titular piece, "Immensity of" by Emily Pretorius. And her music has shown up on a couple of albums. I know Ning Yu has a solo piano piece on her record from Emily, which I thought was really wonderful.
Yeah, Emily's music is awesome.
Yeah.
The cafe that she runs in Inwood.
I've tried to find that cafe on multiple occasions, and I can't seem to find it.
Kuro Kirin.
I know.
The name
she told me what it was. She actually, when we did a Zoom chat, well, I guess whenever Ning's record came out, this came up, And
Oh wow.
I ride my bike in Inwood all the time. And I literally like 3 or 4 times I've tried to find this cafe and I fail. And I don't know if that's because
Maybe it's,
I'm no longer in the world and I've been uploaded to the Matrix and like maybe I'm not really.
yeah.
Yeah.
No,
Well,
Dan,
it's
actually,
another dimension.
the the album art is a map of where the cafe is.
You just need to know
It's a national treasure kind of moment.
need to know how to read it, and nobody's taught me how to read it. Well,
Mhm.
maybe I'll know after
That's
this
right.
chat. So,
Yeah.
okay, so this is probably the sort of in terms of structural pace. It's the slowest moving piece on the record, right?
Yeah.
Which is
Yeah.
funny because it's also the last piece, so it sort of like opens up into this very expansive musical.
And it's the only one that is a single movement piece.
Yeah, right, right,
It's longer than Katie's piece, but it's just one movement.
right. On an album that's 52 tracks, which is pretty cool. That might I don't think that's the most tracks we have on any album, but it's a
But it's up
competitor.
there.
Yeah, it's a competitor.
Yeah.
Uh,
We're
cool.
just
Well,
trying to get up there.
let's listen to a fragment of
The
this,
end.
which is actually the end.
Yeah.
We'll listen to the final gesture, and then you guys can demystify it or not, as you choose.
You can choose.
Emily Pretorius's Immensity of. Great. So, as you wish.
I think that in a way what you just what you just described about the end of this piece kind of opening up is really the feeling that we want to leave people with on the album. And that's sort of, I mean, that's why like we wanted to play this now. And also, I don't know, listening to it again, it really, in a way, I feel as though our closing gesture kind of hits back at like the basics of the duo, which is just like we're really far away from each other. But I think that because in Emily's piece, actually, for a lot of it, we are very, very close together. And I think that sort of, I mean, her piece is so effective at really at giving that feeling of like, because for so much of the time, actually, we're just really close together. We're really close together. We're just, finding all these like super, I want to say like small, very like, very delicate sounds, and like really just trying to each enter each other's world on that microscopic level. But then, yeah, at the end, it's sort of like, yeah, that's the.
Yeah.
What was also really interesting for us to experience and to do while recording this is, and we really, really love the way that Joel Gordon, our incredible recording engineer, mic'd and sort of handled recording this piece, because it's very quiet. There's a lot of very delicate sounds, and it's just this slow, quiet piece. And it was really interesting for us to record it because when we perform it in accordance with what Emily writes for the piece, the audience should come up and be as close to us as possible. So we like to end concerts with this, and we just invite the audience to come up. People sit behind us, around us, and you just suddenly become this really close and intimate like unit. And it's that moving like that and experiencing music that way like really, really changes the way a piece is received. And we always get like the kind of comments people make after hearing a piece, like hearing this piece and sitting so close to us and like sitting so close with other people, like shoulder to shoulder in this like circle around us. It was interesting to try and think of how we could recreate that intimacy in a recording, where in some ways there's the intimacy of like having on headphones and us going directly into people's ears, but there's not the physical intimacy anymore. And like how does that translate? How do we make it feel like people are really close to us? And I think the way Joel mic'd it really accomplishes a lot of that well. And I was super happy with the way it sounds.
Yeah.
Right. That's yeah, it's a very nice way to close things out. Nina, did you want to, I'm sorry if I interrupt you? Did you want to add anything?
No, I agree.
Awesome. Well, I think it's as a good place as any to wrap up and say congratulations again on this great album, Departure Duo, Immensity of FCR329, available everywhere and I was gonna say everywhere and nowhere, but I don't mean that. I mean available
everywhere.
Yeah.
Everywhere, and especially in the singularity.
Especially in the singularity, which is where we all live most of our lives anyway.
Yeah.
Yes.
Before I forget, definitely want to mention, of course, Joel Gordon, who has been involved in so many wonderful recordings on New Focus and so many other labels, and it's always a pleasure to get masters from Joel. And mixed and mastered by Joel and you guys.
Mm-hmm.
The cover image, as you said, was from a series called Parallel by Anne-Sophie Coiffé. I don't know if I got that right, but and the photo. Wait, where's the photo?
The photos are inside.
Photos are inside, of course, yes.
In the album.
Yes.
Right here.
Right, and of course, the photo. Right.
There's another inside the liner notes.
Right.
Those are by Catherine Nottage.
Yes.
Kate Nottage.
And Mark Wolf, who does so many of our designs, did a beautiful job on the design.
Yeah.
Cool. Thanks, guys. Nice to connect with you for a few minutes, and
yeah,
really fun to hear about your perspective on these pieces.
Yeah. Thank you. We're so excited that we got to New Focus.
Yes.
Yeah. We're such fans.
Well, we, the royal we, are fans too. So great to see you. I hope to see you both soon.
Yeah.
In the real world, if we can extract ourselves.
We can figure out a way out.
If
is it the red pill or the blue pill? I never really remember.
Just try them both.
I'll try them both. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Just go for it.
Bye-bye, guys.